Hi, and welcome to my first AI Art MidJourney prompts tutorial. This is going to be, as I said, my first tutorial. I'm very much looking forward to going through it with you guys. Just a couple things to get out of the way before I get into this. There's a couple assumptions here. First, I'm fairly new to this myself. I've been doing AI art for a little over a week, and I've fallen in love with it. I've just immersed myself in all kinds of different information and tutorials are out there. And I decided to create this tutorial as more of a help for me, but if it also helps other people along the way, so much the better. So before we get into this, it also assumes that you have some idea as to how MidJourney works, i.e. you can generate images from within the application. You know how to use Discord, you know how to type in prompts, you know about the /imagine prompt, etc. This is just going to go over some prompts and what they do within the system and how to create your image. All right, so let's get into this. The first thing we want to go over is what is the subject. Okay, that's the very first thing you want to type in, is what are you creating within MidJourney. For example, here I just typed in the word woman and it returned this image. Of course, as you know, it returns 4 images in a nice little grid. You pick one that you like, or you pick as many of them as you like, and you say upscale this one, or show me more versions of that one, or redo the entire set. But I chose woman. This is one of the 4 images that came up, and I put it in here just as a show as to what you can get when you type in a single word prompt. Now, this is also going through version 4 of MidJourney, so all these commands take that into account. So once you have your subject, the next thing is subject descriptors. What's your subject look like? What's unique about them? For example, here I chose woman, comma pretty, comma blonde hair. So this again is what it returned. The AI engine said, okay, you want a pretty blonde woman. Got it. And threw this up on the screen. I liked it, put it here. So that's as you can see, with 3 simple commands, you can get a very good image, but we need to take this to the next level. All right, this may be good, but we can make it better. The next thing you need to do is put that pretty blonde woman in a scene. So for this example, I used, again, the same woman, pretty blonde hair, and I added sitting in front of a window. Very simple, very easy. And as you can see, we now have a pretty blonde woman sitting in front of a window. Again, putting these prompts, very simple, very clear. They're made for us, poor humans to understand fairly easily. So once you have your scene, the next step is that, just like with the subject, you want to add some scene descriptors. What's going on in the scene? Are there candles? Are there dogs in the background? Is there sky? Whatever the case may be, you want to add those descriptors. So for this example here, what I did was I just simply added raining outside. Now, one of the things that AI doesn't quite comprehend is the difference between raining outside and raining inside. Just because I say a woman sitting in front of a window, it doesn't necessarily know which side of the window she's in. Is she in this part with the rain? Is she in the part without the rain? So, and when you say raining outside, which side of that window is outside? So just one of those things where you may have to play around with it in order to get the effect that you're looking for. So again, once you have your scene, add some descriptors. So if you say standing in front of a counter, that counter may have some candles on it. That counter may have some pots and pans, or it may have a cat walking across it. These are all possibilities that you can add to your scene just by adding a comma and then a descriptor afterwards. All right. So the next step, once you have your subject and subject descriptors, your scene and your scene descriptors, is lighting. How do you want the lighting? Now, lighting in MidJourney, along with any other AI application, is a very complex subject. All I did here was just add the words dramatic lighting, and as you can see, the difference between here and here is fairly significant. We have a completely different lighting scheme. Now, just to give a few off the top of my head, you can do studio lighting, you can do dramatic lighting, you can do cinematic lighting, you can do colored lighting, you can tell it where the lighting is coming from, whether there's backlighting, all kinds of different things that you can add to this. But just as a simple base tutorial to start with, we're just adding dramatic lighting here. Now, if you guys are interested in more of a lighting tutorial, I'm happy to provide one. My personal background is in photography, so I have a fair deal of knowledge regarding camera angles, lighting, different camera settings that you can put in here, but that's for a more advanced tutorial. So right now we're not going to get into that. So once you have your lighting set up, and you can again add different levels of lighting. For example, if I want to put backlighting in here, or I want to add an additional light on the forefront, then that can be done as well within the system. Next thing is to pick your medium. Now, when I say your medium, I'm talking about how do you want the image to be displayed? Do you want it as an oil painting? Do you want it as a photograph? Do you want it as line art? Do you want it as anime or manga or something along those lines? There's lots and lots of possibilities. And again, if you guys want an advanced tutorial on the different types of mediums that are out there to play with, because there are lots and lots of different combinations you can use on this, because not only can you choose like oil painting, but you could say I want an oil painting as if it was painted by Vincent van Gogh, and it will do its best to give you an oil painting in Vincent van Gogh's particular style. For this particular tutorial, I just put in the words oil painting, and as you can see here, it has a nice oil painting effect going on with the image. Now, if I chose something along the lines of photograph, as you can see here, we would get something completely different. And all I did was I changed out the word oil painting for photography. So if you look at the oil painting and then you look at the photography, you can see they're very different images. The lighting effects are different. The whole atmosphere, the atmospheric view of it is very different from other views. And I know I'm using the improper words, and I apologize for that. But once you have your lighting figured out, then the next step, and this is the final step, is to figure out the aspect ratio. Now, the aspect ratio, there's three different, for version 4, there's only 3 different aspect ratios that you can use. Number 1 is the default one, which is the square image. Number 2 is the portrait aspect ratio, which you see here, which is 2:3. I'll get to that in a moment. And then the third and final aspect ratio within version 4, at least at the time of this recording, is aspect ratio 3:2, which is what they call landscape format, which means it's wider than it is tall, as opposed to portrait, which is taller than it is wide. All right, so the way that you do that is if you look down here at the lower right-hand corner, you'll see that it says --AR space 2:3. Now, there's a few important things to take into account on this, because this is kind of tricky. These are special commands within MidJourney. So, for example, you'll notice that between all these different descriptors that we put here, we have a comma between each one. However, after the last descriptor and the AR, there is no comma. There's just a space. All right. Now, that space is is important, as well as the dash. That is the way that MidJourney says, okay, this is a very specific format-related command that the user's putting into the system. All right, so --AR, and AR stands for aspect ratio, and you want then you put a space, and then 2:3 for this. And if you want the wider landscape version, it's AR space 3:2. So this is reversed. And if you want the square version, then you don't even need to include this at all, because the square version is the default. So that, if you like the square version and it works for you, that's perfectly fine. You don't even need to include it. All right. So now you've created your subject descriptors, your scene descriptors, your lighting, and the format or the medium that you want it created on, and your aspect ratio. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's those 7 simple steps. Now, there are a few other things just to keep in mind. And when you got all your things together, the next thing you want to do is just repeat it. You want to just tweak it, move it around, or if you like the general settings, but you don't necessarily like the images that's returning, just hit that refresh button on those 4 images, which is like 2 arrows and a round circle. You can just click on that button and it'll redo the entire set, give you 4 new images to look at. Or you can just go around and change some of the tags and see what it gives you on return. That's the beauty, for me at least, of doing the AI imagery, because it's just, it's a blast. I enjoy it like no one's business. Anyway, so once you've got the image that you want, there's just a few things that you need to think about. And the first one is hands. If your subject has hands or feet, there is a very high chance that at least MidJourney version 4 will mess it up. Now, I'm going to go back to our previous image, and I don't know if any one of you noticed, but when you were looking at this particular photo, did you notice her hands? She's got like 10 fingers on that one hand. Last time I checked, pretty blonde girls sitting in front of windows when it's raining outside don't normally have 10 fingers. Now, you might be fine with 10 fingers, and that's all good. That's up to you. But, it's something you just want to keep an eye out. If you see this, though, you can modify this, but that's kind of something for the future as far as more advanced tutorials go. But we'll get into that at a later date. Now, another thing to think of is editing. Once you have the image, that's not necessarily the end of that image. If there's some things that annoy you in there, you can go in and adjust it. For example, on this image here, when it was originally generated, as I was saying before, the AI doesn't necessarily notice the difference between rain that's outside or inside. It doesn't quite understand, the whole outside inside thing. So I had to go through in Photoshop and remove some of the raindrops that were on this young lady's clothing, so it looked like the rain was outside and not both inside and outside. You can also, one of the things it also does is, like on the cheeks, it tends to put stuff on the cheeks of humans for some reason. I don't know why. It doesn't always do it, but sometimes it does. So if you go into Photoshop, it's very easy to go in and remove that. And again, if you guys want some Photoshop tutorials, I'm very experienced with Photoshop, and I would be more than happy to give some Photoshop tutorials on how to improve the images that the AI generator creates. You could also use those same types of commands within other image editing software and get similar effects. In any case, the next, and the third thing is have fun. There's no set rules to this. There is nobody looking over your shoulder saying it must do this, must do that. Just change tags, play with it, remove things, add things, see what happens. If you like it, keep it. One of the things I do personally is I have a series of Word documents where I copy and I paste tags in there first, and then I copy them into MidJourney. That way I have a running history of all the different things I tried. So if I try something and it didn't quite work, I can very easily go back to a previous version and re-put things in and modify it from there. So that's something that I highly recommend. In any case, that's the end of my little tutorial here. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope some of you found it useful. If there's other things that you would like me to cover, please do let me know. I'll be more than happy to jump into those in the future. And if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, whatever the case may be, please feel free to leave them down below. I would really love to hear from you guys. And I hope you have a fantastic day. Take care now.